What's going on, everybody? It is Overreaction Time once again. I'm your host, Simon Samano, and look who I got with me for the post-UFC 315 edition of ORT. It is none other, flexing on me already, the Boston shot caller, Nolan King. What's up, Noli? How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. Just stretching out, ready to go. Excited to be back post pay-per-view. So yeah, let's get this thing going.
Only the best coming out of the pay-per-views, man.
Oh,
you ready for this? You ready for this thing?
Always. Let's do it.
All right. Kamikaze, you know what time it is. Hit it.
I mean, guys, what are you fucking? Is this tonight's stupid question night? Are you guys that fucking stupid? You can't be that fucking stupid. Who gives a shit? One of the dumbest things I've ever read in my life. Fucking common sense. Everybody knows that.
All right, Nolan, here we go. We're going to get started with the top of the card at UFC 315, where we had a welterweight title fight between Belal Muhammad and Della Maddalena. And guess what? Congratulations are in order for Della Maddalena, who is the new welterweight champion after one hell of a fight of the night for both guys, getting a bonus here. Heck of a win that Jack absolutely earned. But, you know, Noli, I'm going to start on the other side with my first overreaction, and let me go ahead and hit you with this one, all right? UFC 315 turned out to be a complete disaster for Belal Muhammad.
Yeah, I don't think that's an overreaction at all because, I mean, he went in there kind of almost seemingly playing with house money, right? Like everybody's talking about how Jack maybe should have had one more before he fights for the title. People talking about Shavkat, about Ian Gary. It seemed like they were overlooking Jack, and he was in the position to go out there and get a win and have people already talking about his next fight. Additionally, I think he had the respect that he deserved going into this finally. Maybe there's some haters. Maybe there were some haters, some doubters. But I do think when it came to his abilities, I saw a lot more crediting of him with the skills that he brings to the cage. I felt like going into this one versus his past fight. Maybe that was because he had the title. Maybe it's an easy thing for people to say at that point, right? Oh, the guy that has gold's good. Like it shouldn't be that hard, right? But I do think it was a bit of a disaster for him, right? A fight that against a contender that shouldn't maybe have been in that position. Obviously, now we know revisionist mindset is that he should have been in that position because now he's the welterweight champ. But yeah, it's a tough one coming off that injury, coming off of a title win. I don't think he's done. I'm not going to write him off. I think he's still one of the best in the world. He could go out there in a rematch and win, sure. But I definitely think when you're in that position as a champion, as a favorite, fighting a contender that people are questioning and you go out there and you lose, it's not great.
Yeah, Della Maddalena deserves a shit ton of credit for that victory on Saturday night. I mean, fought his ass off. But he's coming off a 14-month layoff, coming off an injury layoff. Like this is, we'll shift to talking about Jack and stuff afterwards. But for Belal, this could not have gone any worse. I mean, let's just consider not just the fight itself, but let's just consider circumstances leading up to this fight. Let's consider, a little, thing that happened, but at the weigh-ins, the commissioner forgetting, not even recognizing who Belal Muhammad was. That sucks. I mean, come on now. Like, it's the champion, right? But going into the fight, he's talking about showing off his Canelo hands. He's talking about how he's not going to shoot any takedowns. Shot some takedowns. Then to get pieced up the way he did, he's got that really bad cut on his lip. Just all around, not just the fight itself. It's just, I thought it was a bad week. It's funny that you say that he had the respect that he deserved going. I'm not sure. I don't know that I agree with that. Like, what made you think that he had the respect going into the fight?
I think he had the respect, not necessarily. Again, he's going to be swimming upstream, I think, for his whole career and it's not his fault. I think he's actually done a pretty good job of leaning into it, right? Like laughing at himself and maybe leaning into the haters and getting them going a little bit. But I think in terms of his abilities, I think there were a lot of people going into this fight that thought he was going to walk right through Jack. Like, I think, again, the conversation around Jack was, is he ready? Is it too soon? Has he earned it? Should the UFC, like, what's up with Shavkat, Sean Brady, Ian Gary? Like, I think people in general were overlooking Jack, and that was partially due to the fact that Belal was recognized as a pretty decent champion. People could, dump on his fighting style. They could not like his personality for whatever reason, but I do think he had, that the confidence in the general public had the confidence that he wouldn't be losing the title in that fight. And then he goes in there and he loses it. So I think that was the one thing that he kind of had going. The other ones don't really matter. I mean, if he's not a guy that's fazed by the court of public opinion, which he doesn't seem to be, kind of cares. But I think in terms of his abilities, I think people were starting to finally give him that credit that he deserves in terms of what he brings to the cage in the win-loss, the ability to win a fight.
Yeah. Okay. Let me ask you this too.
And then he lost.
Okay, I want to ask you this, Nolan. Do you think that Belal fought his fight? There's a lot of talk right now about whether or not he shot enough takedowns or he, should have shot more. I think he shot 9 takedowns and completed 3 of them. Of course, every time he shot and completed one, it seemed like Jack was just getting right back up pretty quickly. So I'm sure that was demoralizing to some degree. But do you think ultimately that he fought his fight, or if he could do it over again, could he or should he have done something differently?
Yeah, I mean, I would have. It's a tough thing, right, in fighting, because fighters, the point should be to win, but there's also money incentives, promotional respect when it comes for being exciting. I think that's just the bottom line, right? And even I think sometimes the UFC can be too hard on guys that aren't the most exciting. At the same time, I also understand the business side of it, where you want to be able to put on, exciting fights. So it's an imperfect equation here that doesn't really have an answer. So when you got a guy like Belal, who maybe he's starting to get a little more confident in his fighting outside of his, his base or whatever you want to call it, was he trying to prove a point? I feel like at some point in that fight, when things start not going your way, when they start not going your way, like you would recognize, okay, I need to switch it up. I need to go back to my roots. So I would have liked to see him go back to his more traditional approach as things started not going well for him, which he didn't seem to do. But who knows? I mean, who knows what he was looking at to fight the way that he did? Maybe going in, he felt confident in some areas. So I don't think he fought the best. Obviously, he didn't fight the best style fight he didn't fight the best style that he could have. Otherwise, he'd be walking away with the title potentially. So yeah, I would say he fought outside his bounds, but that's the risk you run when you go into the uncomfortable zone, right?
Yeah, I'm probably putting this more. I mean, I don't want to take away too much from Jack, but I'm probably putting this more on Belal. I think he could have fought a little differently. I think he could have tried to establish the wrestling sooner. He didn't. He tried to stand. He tried to do the whole Canelo hands thing. Maybe he felt the pressure from Dana White in the UFC, to be exciting. But man, Belal, if you're in that position, it's about staying champion so you can get your pay-per-view points, right? It's not about being exciting. It's about winning. I bet you if he could do it all over again, he'd do something different. But anyways, he's got an upstream battle now. Who knows? Real quick before we move on, do you think he's going to fight for a title ever again?
I think he could. Yes, I'll say yes. I think we have.
I'm surprised to hear that.
If you look at his trajectory, I don't think he's a guy that has, he doesn't have all this wear and tear on him. He didn't have a big title reign. Pretty dominant on his way up. What I mean? Like he's had some injuries, but for me, I don't view him as somebody that necessarily will have that linear plateau that we see, and then they go back down. So I could see him fighting for a title again, especially with the way welterweight is. He has a win over Sean Brady. He has a win over Leon Edwards. So he's beaten some of the top guys already. It's just a matter of, can he get a win or two to get back there? I think he can.
Such a long road for him to even get that title shot in the first place. The fact that he won it, it just felt like Belal had to hold on to that championship for a while and enjoy it, because I just don't know that he's going to get another shot, man. Like this, especially with the way the perception is, the way the UFC views him. I don't know. He could do something, but right now, if I had to lean one way, I'm going to say he's not going to get another title shot. But we'll see. It's an upstream swim for him to try and get that title shot. But we'll see how it plays out. Okay, man. Let's switch over now and let's talk and move forward here. Coming out of the UFC 315 main event, like I said, Della Maddalena. A heck of a victory. And we thought, now, Nolan, coming out of UFC 315 that we would get some answers about the future, right? We thought this was going to decide things pretty easily, right? If Jack won, we were going to end up with something in the future here regarding UFC 317 or something down the line. If Belal won, same thing. It was going to shake things out. It was going to settle what was going to happen at lightweight and at welterweight. We didn't get those answers. Dana White didn't even show up to the press conference afterwards. He was in Montreal, but he did not even show up. It's a little telling, Nolan. So let me go and hit you with this now. Consider all the factors, okay, when I tell you this. But Jack Della Maddalena beating Belal Muhammad only made things worse for the UFC.
I don't.
Lot to take in. I know.
Yeah. For me, I think Dana's language, I don't think that's necessarily an overreaction. Let me tell you why. Dana's language in his statements about the situation. I think when Mike asked him at the press conference, is this what's happening? If Jack wins, will Islam move up and then Charles and Ilya would fight? Or if Belal wins, then Islam and Topuria will fight. To me, I think that's probably what the promotion wants. Like if the promotion could snap their fingers, make it happen, that would be what they would lay out ultimately for their plot. But you got to also realize too, like Hunter Campbell was in Dagestan last week. I think to me, who's to say that Islam wants to fight in a few weeks on shortish notice? Like that might be the obstacle that they have to get over here. So we're talking about this roadmap and the kind of that little situational, I don't know, not tournament, but situational equation that was going on Saturday. Like who's to say that everybody's already on board with this thing? Even now that the dust has settled and we know which one of those scenarios the UFC would want, who's to say that Islam, wants to take a fight on 6 weeks notice? He's one of the biggest names in the UFC. He's a guy that seems to advocate for himself. Like
it's not 6 weeks notice for Islam. He's been training, I'm sure, knowing that he's going to fight at any point here, It's not really 6 weeks notice, is it?
Well, I mean, to have a fight in front of you, a fighter in front of you.
Sure.
Was he planning on coming back that soon, or was he going to wait to fight in Abu Dhabi in October? We don't know what kind of plans that they had discussed prior to this. And I think sometimes the UFC, we see it a few times a year, right? Where we get down to the wire, usually with the big card. They're calling Alex Pereira up when he was champion to get him to step in. Right now, they don't really have that luxury, even though it sounds like they're trying to get him to go in August. So who knows if it's just more of a situational thing where the UFC ran out of options. They need something big for International Fight Week. This might be the most likely big fight that they can put on. So Hunter Campbell going to Dagestan, was there some arm twisting going on? Was there, maybe some how do I make this happen sort of thing? It's quite possible. I don't think that he would go over there unless there was something to talk about.
But if we don't end up with Islam Ilya, which it looks like it's going to be Islam Jack, right? Like it's going to be Islam Jack next.
I think that would make sense. I mean, if I'm Islam, I think he has that respect from the promotion now to go for a second title. I think it would be really hard, for them to not to say no to him. They do it all the time to fighters, but I think right now the stars have aligned for that to kind of occur, right? Especially like name recognition too. Man, like the UFC, they could have Islam at 170 as the champ and Ilya at 155 as the champ. So that to them, they might make them drool.
Here's my problem here. Here's what I don't like. Islam Ilya is the fight to make. It is 100% the fight to make. And it's not going to happen because Islam's going to get his way here and fight Jack Della. Here's the problem. Islam versus Jack is not a super fight. Like they're going to bill it and hype it like it's a super fight, but it is not a super fight. It is not a super fight, especially compared to Ilya versus Islam. Sorry, like no disrespect to Jack Della Maddalena. He just earned this championship. But this almost feels like it's setting up to be a sort of coronation for Islam. I mean, and I don't even think it's going to be like the definitive moment, where he becomes a simultaneous 2-division champion. And that's the other thing. He's not even going to vacate, right? Didn't Islam say he's not going to vacate one way or the other? So what the heck does that mean for the lightweight division, dude? Like, I don't know. There's so much about this that makes it so much more complicated for the UFC. I said worse in my overreaction. It's more complicated though, like this just makes things, I don't know. This does not feel right. Islam Ilya is right there. It was the fight to make. And I get it. You're going to show Islam some respect. But this fight with Jack, I'd much rather see, would you not rather see Jack Della Maddalena fight Shavkat next?
I'm not a big fan of super fights unless you essentially have two cleared out divisions. And right now,
which this is not a super fight.
You don't really have that. You can make the argument for Islam's side that he wants Topuria to earn it a little bit. I don't necessarily hate that. At the same time, though, if you look at welterweight, I mean, you have Shavkat sitting there. Now that you have a new champion, Sean Brady's a fresh matchup as well. He's certainly gone out there and done a really good job of positioning himself for a title shot. And then you got Ian Gary, who's done the UFC some real solids recently. I know he's 1-1 in his last two, but talk about a guy that doesn't give it, just has ultimate, obviously radiates confidence, but he backs it up too, stepping in there against Shavkat and Prats on short notice and beating Prats. So welterweight's pretty healthy right now.
Don't forget about Joaquin Buckley coming up next month.
Buckley's surging up too. He beats Usman. He's right there. So yeah, I mean, welterweight's really solid right now. So it's kind of unfortunate to see that get clogged up a bit. I'm not a fan. I'm just not a fan of these super fights unless they really, really make sense. Like Valentina Weili right now. I would be okay with, because those divisions, sorry, Verna, I know you're sitting there waiting for your shot, but I think that's a much different scenario than this one right now, especially where Islam Topuria is a huge fight.
It's huge. It's too big, man. I can't believe we're not going to get it. It was right there. The table is set, and who knows what we're going to end up at UFC 317.
I mean, Topuria Charles might not have the stakes. I know an interim title is kind of a joke, but great fight. Great fight. I would not complain.
It's an acceptable consolation, but it's a consolation no less.
I agree with
that.
But
it is an acceptable consolation. I will say that. If that's what we end up getting, and whether that's an interim for as the main event or an interim co-main event, whatever they end up doing there, if that's the fight we get, I will say, as much as I'm hating on the UFC for this, that is an acceptable consolation. So
I think part of it is just Islam Topuria, like up there. I mean, I saw the debates online, right? Islam Topuria, Jones Aspinall, which fight would get people the most excited? Like, those are the two biggest fights I would say that the UFC can put on right now. So
those are the two, and we're not getting either of them at International Fight Week, and that, quite frankly, pisses me off. But whatever, it is what it is. Okay, man. Let's move on to the next thing. Let's move on to the co-main event. All right, co-main event and the women's flyweight division in general here, because at UFC 315, we had Valentina Shevchenko win a unanimous decision against Manon Fiorot. Pretty close fight, but I do think that was the correct decision in the end there. We also had, earlier on the main card, we also had Natalia Silva, who's been surging in the UFC. She went ahead. She had a great performance and defeated Alexa Grasso at UFC 315. And you look at some of the talk coming out of this event, and a lot of people talking about Natalia Silva and how, she should get some consideration to fight Valentina next. But Noli, you kind of just touched on it. So let me just hit you with this. Sorry, Natalia Silva, but Valentina Shevchenko versus Zhang Weili must happen next.
Yeah, I think it's the time. Again, they've aligned so well in their timing that, Verna, Natalia, if Erin Blanchfield or Barber has a really impressive performance and overtakes Silva, I think all those fighters are kind of in a position where even if the UFC says, hey, you're next, but if you got to sit out, whatever, like, we're looking at a year from now. It's not going to take forever. It's not one of these log jams where you have to wait,
right.
Valentina has a knee injury, or, she's got to fight in 3 months, and then you got to wait for the Weili fight, and then you got to wait again. That's not what's going on here. We have everybody that's kind of seemingly healthy and ready to go. So for me, I think you have to book the super fight. Both of those women have essentially cleared out the division. You can argue with Valentina, the margin of difference between her and the rest of the division has decreased a bit.
It's close a little bit. Yeah, it's
still doing her thing. So I think now's the time before it's too late to do it. I think it would be a great fight for sometime this summer. Sign me up. I'm on board. As somebody that doesn't like super fights, this is the example.
The one though.
Well, timing makes sense.
The UFC can't screw this one up. If we're not freaking getting Ilya Islam, and who knows if we're even going to get or ever going to get Jones versus Aspinall. And we've got right now, DDP and Chimaev sort of on ice, but maybe they've got that in the works. Like, they cannot screw this super fight up. This is the one to make.
Not an overreaction.
It's 100% the one to make. Yeah, they can't. They cannot screw this one up, man. And there's options, right? Like you just said, you've got a good fight coming up, headlining a Apex card at the end of this month between Blanchfield and Barber. Seems pretty natural. Natalia Silva could probably fight the winner of that one. Maybe Manon Fiorot or Virna Jandiroba could fight the loser of that one. Like, those girls are all at the top right there. But it's clear that right now it's got to be Valentina versus Zhang Weili. And here's the thing: you could do it in November at MSG. You could do it in December. That could be the main event of a pay-per-view. Like, that probably should be the main event. Would you not agree with that? Like, that's that is a main event worthy pay-per-view. That's a pay-per-view worthy main event right there.
It's two of the best women ever fighting in a super fight that actually makes sense while they're still, again, you could argue Valentina, we don't really
towards the end of their prime.
Yes. Yeah, but she's in her prime. So still, hell yeah. I mean, very rarely do we get the stars align where there's not a lot of collateral damage from a super fight in terms of the division. So let's do it. I mean, UFC's in need of title fights. It seems like they struggle to book their quota sometimes with it. I'm assuming they're both healthy. Like, let's turn it around. Let's see how quickly we can get this booked.
Let's get it popping, man. I love it. We're on the same page there. Let's get it. And you don't even like super fights. I love that we can get you on board for this one, though. Noli's a man of reason. Man of reason. If it doesn't clog anything up, No one's ready to go.
Yeah,
Me,
the problem is though with me,
I want to see the best fights.
I like want things to be arranged a certain way, but if you put any of these in front of me, like I'm going to tune in and watch anyway. So it comes with the caveat.
Yeah, we know that.
Yeah,
we know. Yeah. All right, man. All right, let's move on to UFC 315, and I'm gonna get a little fired up here, probably talking about this one. Only fair warning, but on the main card of UFC 315, Ayman Zahabi eked out a, let's just say, controversial unanimous decision win over Jose Aldo, with all three judges scoring at 29-28 in his favor. Pretty good fight, like a fight that early on in those first two rounds was kind of like, okay. Third round got pretty crazy. But dude, to me, it's pretty clear that Jose Aldo won. And so I'm just going to hit you with this right now, Noli, because this is how I feel in my heart of hearts about this. Jose Aldo was done completely dirty at UFC 315.
Not an overreaction at all, man.
Completely dirty, man.
I don't understand the scorecards on that one. I mean, you look at the third round, right? Aldo was on his way to a pretty clear 10-9. You know, if he had kept doing damage for the rest of the round, could have been 10-8. But then he I've never seen a more blatant look at the clock ever. Like, I was like, oh, what is he doing? Tired. And just from there, I mean, he was drained. It was, like I said on Twitter, it's shades. Mark Hominick was sitting front row. It was shades of when those two fought at UFC 129 back in the day, where Aldo ran out of gas and Hominick was on top of him. So to me, like, I think it clearly swung in the 10-9 direction though towards Zahabi. I mean, you gotta take that round and score it in its entirety. You can't just look at the sequence where Zahabi was winning and say, oh, that looked like a 10-8 sequence. No, like, he was almost being 10-8'd himself on the other way. So clear 10-9 to me in the third round. You give Aldo the first two, I thought were pretty clear as well. And I think this should have been pretty cookie cutter in terms of the scoring. Yeah,
dude. I mean, listen, it very easily could have been 30-27 Aldo. There's no argument to be made that it could have been 30-27 Zahabi. There is no argument to be made. And I'm so glad that you brought that up about the last round, Nolan, because I see people online talking about how it could have been a 10-8 for Zahabi. Are you freaking kidding me, man? There's only one guy who almost got finished in that round, and it was Zahabi. Aldo legitimately almost finished Zahabi. Zahabi, while he had those 2 minutes of control time at the end, it was pretty standard ground and pound. He was never about to finish that fight. Like, would you agree with me there? Was he ever about to finish the fight?
No. I mean,
I didn't think Aldo was ever about to be finished. Whereas Zahabi took two freaking soccer kicks to the face, one that knocked him down hard. And unfortunately, you know, when you go in like that, the way Aldo did, he didn't get the finish, but he almost finished him. You can't say the same the other way around. That's why I think umbrage with that.
Zahabi did do his damage. I mean, it was both superficial and it seemed like to a certain degree internal as well, which is always a little tough to gauge. But to me, I thought it was a pretty clear, again, for some reason, I think this is a problem in scoring across the board, is that when it comes to rounds that are back and forth, or they have moments for big guys, that for some reason there's a whole crowd of people, and maybe it's just a natural human thing where you look at how kind of things ended. It's almost like a bias towards the fighter that succeeded last, that you end up saying, oh, look at, they did better than the first half of the round. But that's not the way that it works when you're supposed to be scoring. You're supposed to score the round in its entirety. Every, knockdown that is of equal, equal punishment or whatever you want to call it, damage. Yeah. If it happened at the first second or the last second, they should be
matter. Everybody talks about, this is that whole mentality of like, you can finish a fight, you can finish a round strong and steal the round, yada yada yada, right? Like that people do that. The timing of when you do your damage. Yeah, I don't care.
And I think it must play in the judges' minds too, because it's not just people on Twitter that are doing this. Obviously, the three cage that were cage side for this, you wonder how much that factored into their cards too.
Well, so let me tell you, I'm gonna expand my overreaction here, Nolan, right? Because I'm really upset at the result. But if you watch this this program after that fight got booked between when we found out that Aldo was going to fight Zahabi in Montreal, I was upset about it. And now I'm really upset about it because Jose Aldo deserved better than what he got in what might be his retirement fight. Yeah, we know MMA retirements usually don't stick, but clearly he was super discouraged afterwards. He deserved better, man. He should not have been in this fight in the first place. He should not have been booked in what could be like knowing going into this, you knew this could be his last fight. He should not have been booked against, no disrespect to Imam Zahabi, but a guy who's never going to be champion, who you're not going to put over in any way, shape, or form. Why is he fighting a hometown guy in his hometown? I couldn't believe that we had to watch a Jose Aldo fight. And this is what I was worried about. I couldn't believe that during the intros, you heard some boos when Jose Aldo was being announced because they were going crazy for Zahabi naturally, who was the blue corner, right? Blue corner Zahabi gets the big cheers because he's the hometown guy, right? Then we go to Jose Aldo, and I hear boos. I hear some boos in the crowd. Are you kidding me? Jose Aldo deserves better than that. Then he's got to fight this fight with Zahabi chants the entire time. Dude, as much as I love like that they did what they did with Dustin Poirier, this was a huge letdown that they did this with Jose Aldo. And then to see Zahabi be the beneficiary of some hometown cooking when it came to the judging, I'm pissed about this. I'm legitimately upset about this, Nolan.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what kind of business discussions went on with Jose Aldo in this like twilight of his career with the last 3 fights that he had, right? Because I think
why did he come back?
There was the same reaction to when he fought, I believe, Jonathan Martinez, and when he fought who was the one before this? Can't remember off the top of my head. Something that was very, very similar. Batista, right?
Batista.
Yeah, like Batista. I think those are 3 guys that, you know, they're kind of in the 10 to 20 range that I don't think anybody necessarily sees as like future title challengers, but they've done well for themselves. They're on a roll. They deserve their ranking for sure. You know, I wonder if for Aldo, did he want to be placed as if he was any other fighter? Like we see a lot of legends that end up they only want legends bouts, right? They hold off for certain matchups. They want big names. They want fights that are really close to the title, even though maybe they're on a losing streak. To me, I mean, it's certainly kind of a sweet gig. Like I'm guessing Aldo's paid quite a bit of money. I used to say this about Arlovsky. I thought he had the best gig in the game. He would get paid 6-figure, you know, $250,000 or whatever was reported for his pay to fight Jared Vandera on the prelims at the Apex. And he would do it. He did it for 10 fights in a row. So on one hand, I could see the hunger that some fighters have to want to fight closest to the title as the UFC will allow them. On the other hand, I do wonder if financially for Aldo, he's like, man, you know, I can fight good fighters that aren't really going to, you know, be the top 3 contenders that are going to piece me up and have competitive fights and probably win some and see where I'm at. So I don't know what kind of discussions they have, if any, with the UFC about what his exact plans were. But from a fan's perspective, it definitely was tough to kind of see him. And again, no disrespect to the guys that I named, great fighters who have been on a roll and are trying to really position themselves as contenders. But I think when you see a name like Aldo on a poster, you kind of expect on the other side to be either a legend or somebody that's a top contender. So maybe Aldo's getting out at the right time. Maybe that's what this is telling me. Maybe. But I have one suggestion before we move on to the next topic. Yeah.
And that is that if Jose Aldo's retirement doesn't stick, then they should do him right. And if they're going to return to Brazil, it's got to be a featherweight fight between him and Patricio Pitbull. That's got to be the next fight. That's got to be it. That's the way you go out, right? That's got to be the next fight. If he's coming back, that's the one.
Those are the sort of fights that I would like to see the UFC book. And they've done a good job recently with some of the guys that are real veterans that have somehow stuck around on the roster, like Court McGee. They've given him guys that are kind of in his age bracket, that are of his experience level. I would like to see them. There's fighters that Aldo could fight that would be in that same category, right? Like if he's stuck at 135, giving him a Henry Cejudo, giving him a Patricio at 145, which sounds like
he couldn't make 135. It's probably 145.
Yeah, so 145. I love fights like that. Veteran fights, name recognition, throw it in Brazil.
Brazilian
Both
legends.
those guys
Two Brazilian legends, man.
It'd be really cool. I love it.
That's the one. That's the one. Okay, but I don't want to see any more bullshit with Jose Aldo. That the dude deserves better. He's literally he's royalty in this sport, and I just think he's been treated like crap. Maybe you're right. Maybe some discussions, and maybe he just wanted to fight because of the paycheck. But man, everything about what happened Saturday night, it doesn't sit right with me. Okay, I'm gonna take a deep breath here, Nolan. All right, because I was a little fired up there. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna breathe, and now we're gonna go into the next topic. All right, and that is that last week. Wow, I mean, shocker. What were you doing when Alex Pereira put that tweet out, Nolan, that he was unhappy with the UFC? I mean, geez, that was from out of the blue, right? Out of nowhere. I believe it was Tuesday or Wednesday of last week. Might have been Wednesday. I think it was Wednesday, actually. We got this random tweet from Poetan who says, and I'll read it off here for anybody who may have missed it, probably didn't, but I always answer the UFC's calls, but if they want to play with me, we can do that. I've never spoken poorly of the UFC, but with what I've just heard, I'm disheartened. I've already had thoughts of not fighting anymore, and after what was just relayed to me, this may be the start. Now, that tweet gets posted at about 2 p.m. Eastern time, and within 2 hours, we get a video from Alex Pereira, who says he knows nothing about it and that he was hacked. Nolan, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you right now, Alex Pereira claiming he was hacked is number one bullshit.
Man, I've gone back and forth about this, and my reaction is it what you just said, an overreaction, underreaction? I have no idea. And I don't know how we know in 2025. And this is what sucks about social media once again, right? We've become so accustomed of assuming that everybody's in control of their accounts. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. How do you ever prove that? But what I will say is, and I said this at the time, it was probably the loudest tweet that I've heard on Twitter in quite a while on the MMA section. The reaction, I think, from who it was coming from, obviously spread like wildfires. Pretty much everybody was talking about it within a few minutes. So when things definitely seem weird, right? I mean, we've got Ankalaev who's tweeting some kind of cryptic stuff about how Pereira won't fight. Then you have this thing, which seems to be oddly specific and kind of, I mean, the way that it read was more of like a statement to me than I think a hacker would. It was very intricate if it was a hacker. It was intended to cause some real damage.
Yeah.
So who knows, man? You know, I guess maybe we'll be able to have a better gauge on it once we see like kind of or hear from them what exactly is going on. Because it does seem like there's maybe some butting of heads in negotiations or the UFC can't get that one done for whatever reason. I'm not sure. I can't. I hate to speculate one way or the other.
I know. Well, listen, I'm just going to say I agree 1,000% with what Daniel Cormier put out there on Good Guy, Bad Guy, where he's talked with Chael. Hunter, as you had mentioned earlier, Hunter did go to Dagestan, right, to meet with Islam, to talk business with Islam. Probably met with Ankalaev as well. Ankalaev's probably ready to go, right? He's willing to probably headline International Fight Week, June 28th. They need a main event. Who have they always gone to, right? Who have they always gone to? They've always gone to who in these situations for the past 2 years? They've always gone to Alex, right? They've always gone to Poatan. But this is different though, man. Like I can see a scenario where Ank's like on board and then they go to Alex. They're like, hey, Ank's on board. We need you to fight. And he's like, well, wait a minute. I just fought again. I just fought 2.5 months ago. Like, can I take a break here for just a moment? Like, this is different. Like, Poatan is trying to reclaim his championship. He deserves whatever time he needs, whether that's August, September, October, whatever it may be. He deserves to actually take a little bit more of a break than just 2.5 months because he just fought in April and lost to Ank. You're going to do that fight within 2.5 months. That ain't fair to Alex. I could totally see that being a scenario that has played out. Could you not? UFC
100%. I think one of the biggest
they do this, right? Like they do this. They're never going to let the fighter be in control. They're experiencing it right now with John Jones. They've experienced it with Conor in the past. You know, they're not going to let a fighter be in complete control of his own situation here. And Alex probably expecting some respect. I could see that he would take exception to the UFC, hitting him with this or that. We move on.
Yeah, and I can't speak to this specific circumstance because I don't know, but just in general, I mean, speaking as a whole, I think the UFC is very much incentivized money-wise, obviously, to keep up a certain quota when it comes to title fights. And so we've seen them when they don't have, when one thing goes awry or there's a couple champs that are unavailable, where some fighters get essentially pressured or whatever you want to call it into taking title fights maybe a little bit quicker than they wanted to. I mean, we saw this, one of the best pieces of content I have seen in a while, because I think it really peeled back the curtain in a way that we had not. It was way more honest than I expected it to be. Was the Roku documentary that that Roku did on the UFC, where they followed like Hunter and Dana around. There's a segment in there where there's Hunter Campbell sitting down with Aljamain Sterling, and he's trying to get Aljo to take a fight after he fought O'Malley, just turn around again. And so I think for people that are interested in this sort of thing, if you go back and watch that, it was pretty honest, I think, to what actually goes on there. And you could see kind of some of the tactics maybe that the UFC uses to get these guys to fight, like Aljo did. It was actually, after the Cejudo fight to fight O'Malley, It was those negotiations. So yeah, we see this. They certainly try to keep up a quota, and they did it with Merab too. Having Merab fight O'Malley and then turn around and fight Umar. We saw that. We've seen it with Alex, who seems very willing to kind of, again, I'm assuming he's maybe been compensated a little bit additionally compared to some of the others. But yeah, we see this a lot. There's a certain quota that they seem to need to keep up. And when it gets down to the wire here, there's a lot of pressure one way or the other to get these guys to sign up.
It sucks, man. It sucks because I'm sure they've had such a harmonious relationship. And, for the past couple years, Alex and UFC, Alex has been the ultimate company man. And it sucks to think that it's possible that you come to a point where he just needs a little bit more of a favor, for it to work for him, and the UFC maybe would still put the pressure on him. That's what sucks, man. Like, it's a quantity business, and the UFC in this case has fight options that could have and should be headlining 317 that they can't get done. So they go to their old standby, Alex, hey, can you fight in 6 weeks? Can you fight in 2 months? And he wants a break. I don't know, dude. I hate the whole climate. It sucks. It's a terrible climate for the fighters. But that's a conversation that we've had over and over again. It's just a shitty climate for them,
Yeah, no, it's certainly a pretty complex issue. I think there's a lot of checks and balances that aren't being checked or balanced, and this is what we get. So I'm sure we'll be talking about this 3 weeks from now, 6 weeks from now, 9 weeks from now, 900 weeks from now.
I can't wait. I can't wait until I have an episode of ORT where I can wax poetic on how much I hate Kai Kara France versus Alexandre Pantoja as the International Fight Week main event. I fear that we're headed there, dude.
I really fear that that's where hopefully Ilya and Charles is the fallback. Yeah.
I hope. But if there's no title, do you make that the co-main and we still end up with the headline of
I guess no, I think you'd have to just throw the interim title and make believe, which is great for the fighter. Whoever wins gets extra, pay-per-view points. I'm assuming maybe Ilya already has them too. With whatever sort of deal that he negotiated with the UFC to get rid of the belt. It's very possible. I've heard of that previously with different fighters. But still, I think you need to have that headline just because it's the best fight that we talked about Islam and Topuria being in the top 2. Islam versus Charles is probably in the top 10 or 15 in terms of just pure fights to get people excited. Yeah. So hopefully.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, Noli, the time for overreacting has come to an end. Man, I appreciate you for being back on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'll have to do it again sometime.
Yeah, you'll have to do it soon, and who knows what we'll be talking about. There's a lot of interesting stuff coming ahead with the UFC. Man, we'll see how it all plays out. But for everybody who has tuned in, I appreciate you guys for watching. Please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button one more time to Noli. I appreciate you, man, and we will see you guys on the next edition of Overreaction Time. Dana, take us away.
MMA Junkie AI.